All right, we're in Romans chapter 4, starting in verse 1. What then shall we say that Abraham, our forefather, according to the flesh, has found? For if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. For what does the Scripture say? And Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. Now to the one who works, his wage is not reckoned as a favor, but as what is due. But to the one who does not work, but believes in him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is reckoned as righteousness. Just as David also speaks of the blessing upon the man to whom God reckons righteousness apart from works. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds have been forgiven and whose sins have been covered. Blessed is the man whose sin the Lord will not take into account. Go ahead and stop there. Okay, so we're really just continuing Paul's argument here of works and faith and righteousness, all stemming from that core question of how do you avoid the wrath of God is what it is. So we get into some examples. I guess that's what he's doing.
Fellas, I'm gonna sit by you, Big John.
Oh, watch out, John.
This is where all the good-looking guys hang out, but don't tell them that.
We're in Romans 4.
Oh, okay, I'm ready. Let's roll.
So we get to, now he's using illustrations of people here. And he uses Abraham. All right, so let's go ahead and just talk about who is Abraham. Why is he significant to Paul at this time? Why was Paul mentioning and referring to Abraham?
It's kind of the first guy, the patriarch, the first guy in their religion, so to speak, that God spoke to.
He is the first Jew.
Yes, that's correct.
That's the way to look at that. He is the first Jew. He's the first one that had the covenant with God.
But with that, all right, I agree with that, the covenant.
That's a good thing that you agree with me, yes.
I'm trying to figure, when you say Jew, you're talking the religious Jew or the ethnicity?
No, the law wasn't in yet. Moses brought the law in. Abraham was just the
Right.
father of the nation of Israel.
Right.
Right, I'm getting hung up, not hung up, but is that, can they trace the, what do you call it,
Lineage?
Lineage.
no, not lineage, but you have the race of Jew versus the religious Jew.
I would say they're one. I would say they're one and the same. So I'm not sure if I understand the distinction between
Abraham was the one that God picked out to start the nation.
Right. No, I got that part.
Right.
But when you think of, whether you're American or Indian or whatever,
I think they were
I don't know
all.
if they had that back then.
Yeah, I would say they were probably, there was no, I don't think there was a distinction at that time. I mean,
you talk about externally, like some cultures have like people with long noses and.
Well, no, just the race of Jews as opposed to the religion of the Jews.
Yeah, but you gotta remember now, they were Israelites. Judaism, Jew came in later on once Moses brought in the law, Jew. But most people, when you refer to Abraham, or even today, they're Israelites. Yeah, they're Jews because of their religion that came in with the law, but prior to that, they're Israel, and they're all still Israelites.
Because there was Israelites before Abraham.
Yes.
Just that, okay.
Well, no.
Well, they were
No,
people
because-
that lived there. That's what I was trying
Well,
to
no,
say.
that was Canaan. But long story short, Abraham
yeah.
was the first Israelites. They were Israelites because you gotta remember there was no nation
There
yet.
was
That
no
came
nation.
later
Okay,
on.
fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
it's more history involved because that's
He
what
was
people.
just in a paganism culture, his
Yes,
parents and everything, and
yes,
God just also
yes,
spoke to him.
Yes.
And he believed God.
Yes.
That's the big thing.
Sorry.
Faith.
Yes.
So no,
Yes.
it's important to understand who Abraham is because
Yes,
it was
yes.
that important to Paul at this time. So I want to get it set.
And no
What's
Jews
the
went-
significance of saying Abraham?
And what was, and then you're right, because I love what you're saying, and it kind of ties it all in, because you're going to the Judaism part. Abraham is, in a sense, which we're going to get into Romans, who is Abraham? He is actually the patriarch of all people of faith.
That's right.
Yep. That's right.
That's what's so significant about him.
Right.
And so they all look back to him. And then Paul saying, when was he counted as righteous? Was it after circumcision? No, it was before. That's,
Which he ties in the Gentiles, we're all part of the same family now on the spiritual end. That's why Abraham is so significant
And
for us.
in these days, lineage was super important. Tie yourself back to David, tie yourself back to, and to tie yourself back to Abraham directly, and they all knew their lineage.
yeah.
Then that was a common point that Paul's trying to make here.
We see in this first verse, he talks about Abraham, our father. That's how it's referred to. Let's do a little bit more background study of Abraham. Genesis, and I think it'd be important if you guys flip to Genesis 15, chapter 15. 1 through 6, I believe. That's what I'm bookmarked. Yeah, 1 through 6. Who would like to dare to read? Steve, go ahead, 1 through 6.
After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Fear not, Abram, I'm your shield. Your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, you have given me no offspring, and a member of my household will be my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir, your very own son shall be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, Look toward the heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness.
Okay, and so that's what starts it all off, right there. And what started it off was belief. Okay, and why that's important to Paul is because Abram, at this time, by the way, hadn't been named Abraham, was not circumcised. He did not have the law to fulfill and to follow, and yet he was counted as righteous. Okay? So it's kind of like one of those, it should be one of those aha moments for the audience that Paul is talking to or writing to, is like, yes, we've been talking about having to follow the law, and circumcision was one of them. That was the key marker that you were a Hebrew, was that marker. But yet, God counted him as righteous right then and there. But not because of anything that had happened except for one thing. And what was that? Belief. His belief. We use that word belief often for the word faith. Okay? To have that faith in, to be trusting, to lean on. And that's actually what the word believe actually is. It means to lean on full. That's the root of that word, to lean on full. So much that you trust it. You know, we've used the example all the time. You sit in a chair believing, you know, that it's going to hold you up, right? That's that kind of belief, and that's why it's stated here. Okay, and then in 2 it says, if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. What is Paul trying to say there in verse 2?
If it was works, then God would owe you something. It's like, I did this, so you owe me. And then God would be indebted to him for owing him something. And God's not going to do that. So he can't boast, I'm where I'm at because of what I did. You know, the relationship I have is because of what I did. No, it's not going to work that way.
It works to boast to man, but not
Yes.
before God.
That's what I get.
But I think he's just making a point here that even if he was justified by works,
Not before God.
and it wouldn't, even if that was the case, that it wouldn't, when it came to God, he couldn't make that statement.
Who was as a Jewish nation, who was their named patriarch? Abraham. So if Abraham could not be accounted righteous for his works, we're in bad shape, y'all. That's Abraham and Moses are the two, staples. And that's what they're basically, if he can't be justified before God works, then we're really in trouble.
What other things do we know about Abraham? Let me ask it this way. Was he perfect?
Ooh.
No, he was a pagan before God called him.
He was pagan.
He was a worshiper.
Even after, did he live his life
worshiper.
totally with faith? No, he didn't. He made some dumb decisions because of his lack of faith in God, but God never gave up on him.
So it wasn't where he had to have the status of perfect, right? Of, well, once you fail, that's it. You're out. You're out of the club, if you will, type of thing.
It was strictly God's decision to choose him,
Right.
to choose that man and his clan, basically to be the start of
Right.
his people.
Yeah, even his lack of faith throughout his life, if you notice, his lack of faith was usually around his circumstances,
Yeah.
but his lack of faith never doubted God. It's kind of, I know it's kind of weird to think about,
Yeah.
because your own life an example, but his doubt was never in God himself. Did I get this plan wrong, and do I need to help God out like we always do? So I think it's when you look at Abraham's life, you got to distinguish the two in our lives. We may make bad decisions, but my doubt is never in Christ. Never. When it comes to salvation, it's never in doubt. But sometimes I may venture off in some areas because
I'm recounting in my mind events that we see in Genesis where he basically sells his wife off,
Right.
in order for him not to get hurt by the thugs.
Yeah.
I think it happened twice.
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 You think
He didn't even learn the first time.
Exactly. It's like
That's funny.
just things like that. Just you look at it and go, but he's our father. He's our example. He's what has been elevated as the example to be, and yet there's this huge amount of imperfection that is there at the same time. Maybe it's just me, but it brings me hope. With it, in order to stand right with God, that's what this is really what it's about here. Verse 3, for what does the scripture say? And Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. That's what we just read in Genesis. Here, he believed, that's that trust. And this word then, reckoned. You might have counted.
Counted.
Yeah. So what is this counted, reckoned? What is that fancy word?
Compensation.
Compensation?
Compensated. Since he believed, he was considered righteous.
According to, I don't know, dictionary.com, I don't know who this is. Definition 1, establish by counting or calculation. His debts were reckoned at $300,000, whatever. Number 2, consider or regard in a specified way. The event was reckoned as a failure. Third one, he reckons that the army shall pull him out entirely. So 3 kinds of way of reckoning here.
Yeah, one is very objective, always get those two confused. The counting of the wage is very specific. There's no question, the last example or definition you had was more
A belief,
a belief, a guess, a hope,
right?
It
Where
sounds
the
like
first one,
it sounds like it comes from a word, ego, something other, that is like an accounting type accounting.
yeah, but my point is that there's no argument.
It's very objective.
You have, if I'm gonna give you some money, I'm gonna give you so many dollars and cents to the
Right.
penny, that we all would agree that that's exactly what it is. It's not just oh, you're a good guy. No, it's usually
Yeah,
the exact number. I guess
So
that's
it's-
the point. It can be very specifically counted.
right. Often used in accounting is what that is, and when you have a balance sheet, and you've got to put something on the other side of the ledger to balance it out. And you get this idea that all the sins had to be accounted for and balanced out here. And that's what Abraham was balanced out. Not by himself, not by his works, right?
He had a right standing.
He had a right which brought him to a right standing. And I want to be careful because sometimes we flip-flop that. We say, oh, if we get into a right standing, then we'll be balanced out. We'll be reckoned.
Right.
That's not what that is. Is God's work is what recognized,
It's his doing.
right, balanced us out
Yeah.
to righteousness.
Yeah, because he did nothing to achieve this.
Correct.
Because it's all faith.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what, exactly,
Yeah.
that's the key, is he did nothing to earn
To
this.
earn it.
I'm just gonna step in and on your account, because I love you, I'm gonna give you this righteousness. You can't do anything, all you gotta do is show up and say, well, you're the boss and I trust you. I like the way the accounting kind of ends, because that's the way we is,
Yeah.
we can kind of see that.
Yeah.
I can have as much debt as I want, and if the boss comes in and says, it's gone. And what did I do? You didn't do anything. You just hear, you believe it, that's fine. That's all you need. You get righteousness. You're debt free now.
He said, I want you to get up and go, but I'm not telling you where you're going. I'm right going to go. And he said, he got up and went. So he believed in God. And for 2,000 years, he dealt with man, and man just got worse and worse, and he had to destroy it with the flood. And then he says, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to create a nation. I'm going to be their God. They're going to be my people, and through them, we'll reach the world. And so he goes to Abraham and gets the ball rolling. You know. And if Abraham would work, you work for a wage, it's something you get for it. And then he could say, well, you owe me now, because look what I did. And, you know.
Right. You just brought up another example of Abraham about just packing up and leaving. I mean,
That's a faith.
it was hard enough for me to go from San Antonio to here. I mean, I can't imagine you being said, I want you to pack up and get going. Where? I'll let you know.
Yeah.
You know, how far? I'll let you know.
Yeah.
You know, when do I stop? I'll let you know.
But he also attached a promise to it.
Yes.
If you do this, I will make you a great
Right.
nation, and all of the things in chapter 12 of Genesis.
Right.
Right? So God gave him that hope that's out there. You know, when you go, because of your belief, I'm going to make you a great nation. So God made that offer to him, and he believed it. That's
Believe
why,
that it will be carried out.
and that's what allowed him to move.
We don't have a play-by-play. You ever really pondered on that? Because we don't, it doesn't
Yeah,
tell
we
you
don't have
everything. How did God manifest? Because I think throughout, somehow, he proved his worth to Abraham as Abraham went on. That's what because it's not a play-by-play.
Right.
How did he communicate? Some people say he verbally. I mean, this is things like the bush with Moses. That's what I wonder on. I look at it and that is an awesome experience for Abraham. Think about the creator of the universe is coming to you and say, hey, do you trust me?
Right.
And then as he goes, even when he messes up, but we don't know what God is telling him or showing him as he moves on. That's what I find. I never thought, I ponder on that. Man, what did Abraham live through?
Yeah, if you go back to Genesis chapter 12, that's all in quotes. Everything is in quotes of what God. This is God speaking to Abraham.
Yeah.
You know, and once again, is it just a voice? Like, or
Right.
something like, like Paul, received on road to Damascus? Was it a physical representation? Was it Christ that came and,
Finger on the writing on the wall. I mean, yeah.
we don't know that, but
The thing about the promise itself, it's not like you'll get a new car next week. This is a promise of something he'll never see, other than his son. But a nation of more than the stars, you're never going to see that.
right.
This is a promise so far in advance that he relied on that he'll never see. He'll see a piece of it. But that's the other thing. I mean, we're such a today's society, we're so quick. Would you take on a promise of invest in me now, and I'll make sure that your great grandson gets a payback? You're not going to do that.
Right.
It's amazing, all that.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about it enough, I just want to double check, make sure what righteousness is.
Right standing before God.
Right standing. Yep. Okay. Verse 4, now to the one who works. This is what Frank was referring to earlier. Now to the one who works. His wage is not reckoned as a favor, but as what is due. Do you guys still have the word reckoned in that, or is it or
Credited.
credited? Okay. I think,
And here, it uses the word obligation instead of due.
Mine says debt, but of
a
debt.
debt. Right, right. I really like that.
And I like the way Frank said it is, if we work for God, then God would owe us. And God can't be in debt to someone else. I love that. I've never heard that before like that. At least I never
Right.
stuck. I really like the way that said, God is not going to be indebted to anybody.
Think about the offer that God made to Abraham. If God would have said, when you move, I'll bless you. But he didn't. Right? He didn't make, in other words, he didn't rely on Abraham having to do anything except believe that what I'm telling you is true. And that's what made him righteous and justified before God. Not that he moved, but simply that he believed.
Yeah.
Kind of throws.
Kind of like us now.
Well, Calvinists would say faith is works. Think about that, because that's a great analogy. That throws the Calvinists. That's why I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Faith can't be a work just by using Abraham's example.
Right?
But if he hadn't moved,
Jesus would have to go to the cross, say, y'all just do this and do that.
If he had, I mean, then it wouldn't, I mean, that's where the, yeah.
then he would not have had faith.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
Verification of his faith.
That's a demonstration.
Which is what? So it wasn't his belief that made him justified, but what did that belief then do? Then the works comes following, right? Just like in our life. Our belief is not what saved us, but we should have the works that follow. Good works should follow after we believe, right? That's exactly what we're seeing in the example of Abraham. Is he believed, and then the works follow that he did what God had called him.
I believe, I think you said it.
Yeah.
I think you meant to say, I believe is what saves us.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you said not, but I knew. I caught it, but I knew it. So I don't think he did. I believe that.
Heretical.
No, not
No.
yet.
I heard the same thing, but I know Mickey. That's not what he meant.
No.
That's fine.
So that faith is an internal thing. It's hard to see someone's faith unless you see it through their works, which is the external.
Right.
That's the only way that you can know that someone has faith, is by witnessing. the
How do we
works.
know that Abraham believed?
Right. How do we know? Right.
It's because he went.
Because he went.
Yeah, and I think as we look at the New Testament philosophy on that, this is where it makes me go to Galatians, and I think sometimes we want to do the works. When I mean works, is going out in this, but just a simple patience, kindness,
Right.
love. That's the fruit of the Spirit. Sometimes we overlook those simple compassion. We want to physically do some works, like he left physically.
Right.
I think us is sometimes we need to take a step back and say, let me treat people the way Christ treated people.
Right.
And we kind of need, number one, when I first became a believer, I overlooked that. I really did. I started hitting the streets. And I have to put myself in check.
Think about what our works, the reason for our works. The reason for our works is just to be a witness to who
Yeah.
he is, right?
Yeah.
So we should, in our works should always be an expression of who God is to other people. That's
Right.
the example. Not that we're working for anything,
Yes.
but we're working to be that, to express who he is.
Just be a conduit. Just let it. That's what I've learned. Thank God. It took a long time. And I know I can be argumentative, but I've tried to take a step back and say, I want to hear a difference of opinion, as long as it's not heretical. I love what you said. But, just be a conduit for God's love. That's what you have to be. You want to bring people to Christ? Let him flow through you. Quit trying to work at it so much. And, that's where I used to bog down. I wanted to work at it. Don't force it.
So these negative kind of works that we do today are things like cutting the grass for the church, or doing external things that are really just seen by men. I'm trying to come up with other examples. In the Hebrew, it was obvious what works were. One, obey the law.
That's right.
Right, that was one of
That's
the
right.
things, and there was a lot to obey.
I
So
see where you're going with this, yeah. I see
with
what
it,
you're
but with the New Testament,
And I think an even worse example, New Testament wise, would be if you think you're doing some kind of penitence or to earn your
That's good.
righteousness with,
Yeah.
standing with God. Well,
Yeah.
it's saying something, doing something.
right?
I had a preacher, and it's funny, this happened in real life years ago when I first started coming here. I heard a preacher preach about, because I was raised Roman Catholic, so we go to church. You got to go to church every Sunday. Okay, it was boy, big deal. Well, he says, and this was just a minister, wasn't Roman Catholic. He goes, did you pass up? And you're gonna love this. 2 people on the side of the road, women with a flat tire. You just, I got to get to church. I got the Spirit of the Lord. I went, good point. This has really happened. A week later, I'm coming here. Guess what happened? I'm passing up 2 women. I'm not kidding y'all. On the side of the road with a flat tire. And I'm on my way here to teach Sunday school and all. I said, no. And I stopped and helped them and all that. But my point is, keeping the law, I got to get there to heck. Well, the Spirit is love.
Right.
I missed Sunday, but guess what? I helped somebody out and I shared Christ. So, and that's a things, miraculous things. A new believer, God reaches out and says, let me, I'm going to show you something. That's true, though.
Right. All right, 5 again. But the one who does not work, but believes in him who justifies the ungodly, his faith is reckoned as righteousness. In the wording of this, I think, I'm trying to not say I need to rewrite the Bible. That's not what I'm trying to say here. Is that, but to the one who does work, but believes in him. The next parts of those phrases, who justifies the ungodly, that could be thought of as a parenthetical or as a descriptor of who he's just referred to. Believes in him. This is a capital him. This is talking about God here. Because you could literally say, who believes, but believes in him, his faith is reckoned as righteousness. What I'm trying to say is that who justifies the ungodly is a descriptor of who him is. Okay?
Oh, I see.
Okay? Him, because what's reckoned as righteousness is the believes in him, his faith is. Okay? So I just want to make it kind of clearer that Paul is just adding clarification of who him is.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So, 6, just as David also speaks of the blessing upon the man. And so now he's starting to get into describing David in relationship actually back to Abraham, because he'll get back to Abraham again in this. Speaks of the blessings upon the man to whom God reckons righteousness apart from work. So real quickly, who then is David? He's done, he's explained he's used Abraham as an example. Now he uses his dude, David. And who's this dude, David?
He's the great king
Great king.
of Israel.
The great
The one that
defender.
built the temple, and that's kind of like number 2 on there. The
He didn't
Jewish-
build, he didn't
Big
build
hit?
it.
Well, no, but-
Yeah.
Yeah, Solomon built it.
Solomon built it.
God wouldn't let David
But
build
David
it.
was a hero, and again, everyone wanted to put their.
He was the
names
general
back
Patton
to- Yeah,
of there. He was their military. If you want to know anything about David, think war.
Yeah.
Right.
Think fights and conflicts. That was David here. But yet he was a great inspiration to the people here.
Well, Jesus is going to come through this nation that he's creating. And he spoke to Abraham. And to keep the line going, the other people coming behind Abraham, he speaks to them about the same promise. And that's another one, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the same promise to each one of them. I'm carrying this through you.
All right, we need to stop here. It's right in the middle of a thought, as far as I'm concerned. We'll stop here.
I apologize, I need to run, I got an appointment I gotta make. I'll see you later.
All right,
Take care.
we'll pray about you. I mean, we'll pray.
You may begin talking.
What are you guys praying for?